I want to point out me and my brother have two different fathers. I lost my father last year to cancer. He left me 90% of his stuff, including his family home that was left to him by his dad. It's been in their family for over 100 years. My brother and my dad didn't have a relationship, but he did leave him $10K. My mom was pissed at the will reading, but since she got $10K she couldn't do anything about it. For the past year me and her live okay together. She went on acting like it was her house like before, which I had no problem with, till in May my brother and his girlfriend moved in without even asking me. They're messy, entitled, and rude. I told them in July I want them out by September because they don't pay for anything nor wash a dish. In August they announced they were pregnant and my sil smugly said, "Guess we won't be moving out now." It didn't go down well, but when I told them I wanted them out, my mom and brother basically laughed in my face. Well, the past few months have been hell. They become worse than before, and my mom enables it, then demands me to treat my sil like a princess because she's pregnant. I once had to wait outside McDonald's till they opened to get her a McMuffin. Well, here where I may be the asshole. Because my sil is pregnant, she eats everything she sees, like the cupcakes my friend made me for my birthday. She ate all 6, didn't even get to try them. I can't even make my lunch the night before because when I go to get it, it will be gone. She'll have a smug look on her face while rubbing her belly, then laugh and say, "I couldn't help myself, blame the baby." If I put stuff in my room, my mom will open the door with the spare key. Sil can go through my mini fridge. Well, a week ago I was running late to collage. I didn't have time for my breakfast or to make lunch, and I had to go to work straight after, so all I had that day was a bar of chocolate. When I got home I was starving. I made myself dinner. While it was cooling down I went to use the bathroom. I must have been in there 10 minutes at most. By the time I came out she had 70% of my dinner ate, and I literally lost my shit. Of course she started crying. My mom and brother started screaming at me for making her cry, making excuses, like how she couldn't help it and it was my fault for leaving food around her. Well, I had enough. I told them get out, just like before I got mocked. But here's the thing, back in October my uncle offered me a life-changing amount of money for the house. I called him up crying a few days ago explaining the situation. He said he'd buy the house, but he will evict my mom and brother. The OFC didn't take it too well, and I have had to stay with a friend. I've been receiving texts and I'm being tagged in multiple posts on social media. I'm starting to think I'm the bad person now. So for making my mom and brother homeless? If I sell the house to my uncle I will lose 100K, but he's always been good to me. And it's one of those situations where I'd sleep better knowing it's gone to someone in my dad's family. My mom told me because of my age I wouldn't be taken seriously if I tried to evict them. If I evict them and continue to live in the house along with the high financial costs, I don't think they'd ever let me live in peace. My mom has health issues and my sil will have to move in with her parents. They won't allow my brother, so I'd be splitting up a young family, in my mom's words. I have a cousin, Kat, who got married to Henry early this year. We weren't close as kids. She was pretty spoiled and would always brag about how much designer stuff she has. Be really mean to people under the guise of just trying to help, etc. Don't go out of our way to interact with one another, but I do see her at family events and whatnot, and we make small talk. I'm engaged to Chris, who is a software engineer. He's co-head of his department at work with 2 other people. Not too long ago, Chris was telling me about how they had some new employees and one of them sounded really familiar. He told me the name and I realized it was Kat's husband. Also, he and Henry hadn't met face to face yet. Kat and Henry had a huge wedding. It was really nice, but all she did for months is brag about how amazing her wedding was. The wedding stuff's died down now, so recently she started going on about how wealthy her husband is and what a great lifestyle they have. One of my other aunts celebrated her 50th about a week ago. I went with Chris and Kat was there with Henry. We were chatting and Kat was saying how Henry has a fantastic new job that pays even more than his previous one. Henry chimed in and said that they were already planning to buy a new house. Kat asked what Chris does. I said he was an engineer like Henry and he has a good job too, but I'll admit I left out where he works on purpose. She smiled and nodded, then said it's fine. She understands that I'm embarrassed and want to keep it quiet. So that was pretty much the end of our conversation. Then, when we were leaving, she pulled me aside and told me to let her and Henry know if we needed help with the wedding. Obviously I knew what she meant and it was just another dig, but I said, "Bye," and left. Literally 2 days later, I get a DM from Kat and she's furious. Well, as much as one can be through text. that I didn't tell them that Chris was one of Henry's bosses. Henry was shocked to see him in the office, and Chris made a comment, "Tell Kat OP and me don't need help, but thanks for offering." Henry's really embarrassed and so's Kat, and she said that we made them look bad on purpose, and if she knew, she'd have never made those comments. It was my duty to tell her and Henry. Chris and I had a really good laugh over this, but she sent a text out to the family group chat we have saying how she was blindsided by me. A few others said that what we did was petty and wrong. My brother lost his job along with all his savings several months ago, and soon after he asked me if it would be okay if he and his wife stayed with me until they could afford their own place again. I hesitated at first, considering I only have a one-bedroom apartment, but according to them they had no other options, so of course I invited them over and bought a blow-up mattress for the living room. For the first month things were manageable, although admittedly cramped. Then my brother told me that sleeping on the mattress was giving him back pains. So he asked if he could buy a small double bed for the living room. The living room is by far the biggest room I have, so I told him that would be fine as long as there was still room for my couch, TV, bookshelves. The living room is also connected to my kitchen in an open plan style. So I reminded my brother to leave walking space around the bed. It's now been 2 months and things have gotten a lot worse. When they first moved in, I would still use the living room every day to unwind on the couch after work. Now whenever I go in, there's a strange vibe like I'm intruding. My brother and his wife are often sitting in bed together when I go in. I always knock and stare at me pointedly until I leave. Sometimes when I sit down they will directly ask me for some alone time and say they would like the room to themselves. This came to a head yesterday when my sister-in-law messaged me with a timetable she'd made of when it would be a good time for me to use the living room. The timetable basically says that they will allow me into the room for an hour each evening, plus 20 minutes around meal times. I basically shut her down instantly and told her there was no way I'd be following the timetable since in the end it's my apartment. She sent me back a huge message with a dozen paragraphs about how my constant presence was ruining her marriage with my brother and they feel like they have no privacy. I tried to talk this over with my brother that night, but when I got home neither my brother //SIL were talking to me. So he's clearly just as pissed. Today an Amazon parcel arrived for my brother with a lock for the living room door, which I told him there's absolutely no way I will allow him to install. My brother says I'm creepy for wanting constant access to where they sleep and he's insisting on installing the lock anyway. My apartment complex didn't do traditional trick or treating on Halloween. Residents were advised to set out pre-packaged individual candy bags on their patios / front door areas if they wanted to participate, but the traditional knock on door, physically hand strangers candy was not permitted. So, Halloween comes and the kids are all dressed up and each building has a scheduled time where the kids go door to door. I ended up having to work late, so my neighbor offered to walk my kids around with hers at our building's scheduled time. About 45 minutes later my kids came home with a small bucket of candy. 6 little goodie bags each from individual apartments that participated. Everything was fine. And my kids didn't say anything weird had happened. They were just excited to eat candy once they got home. The next day I took my kids to the park directly across from our apartment complex. My neighbor was there with her kids as well. The kids were playing and she took out one of those individual goodie bags with candy in it from her purse and started to loudly rummage in it. She ate several pieces of candy and my daughter eventually noticed. Ran up and asked if she could have a piece and my neighbor responded, "Nope, this is my tax candy. Remember that this was my reward for taking you trick or treating last night." I was a little weirded out by that statement and asked what she meant. She said that since she is the one who had to take the kids out, she took 5 bags from each of my kids as a tax. Her son then chimes in and said, "You only took 2 bags from us." She responded with, "But I'm your mom. I was doing OP a favor so they get a higher candy tax." I was thinking about how to respond when I noticed that she was holding a Starburst candy and decided to just smile and nod and go back to watching my kids. I let her continue to finish off the bag of candy and then said, "Hey, aren't you vegan? You know a lot of those candies are made with animal products, right?" I explained what gelatin was and how a lot of those candies are made with it. She was horrified, Googles it, and then told her kids that they were leaving. She said something about how she was going to be sick and stormed off. Now she's giving me dirty looks every time we see her and won't let her kids play if she shows up at the park and we are there. My husband thinks I'm an asshole cause I should have either not said anything about the gelatin or said something right away when I noticed. I don't think it's my job to tell a vegan what is and isn't vegan though, and she deserved it for stealing candy from little kids. When we got home from the park after the gelatin incident, I sat my kids down and asked why they didn't tell me that the neighbor took half of their candy. My oldest kid is 6 and my youngest kid is 4. 6-year-old explained that as they went door to door during their designated trick-or-treating time, she would have my 4-year-old grab 2 bags instead of 1 from each apartment for the majority of them. She explained it to my kids that they were grabbing extra bags for her to be handed over at the end as taxation. So either freaking way she was directly taking candy from my kids or taking candy from other kids through mine. As for the authenticity of her vegan sim, I may have exaggerated when I said super vegan when I first posted this. She claims to be vegan and is very in people's faces about the benefits, etc. It's 100% about the health side. She brags about veganism curing cancer, diabetes, even some mental health issues. I have never once heard her talk about the benefits for animals. She also sells herbal tea products, customized gym clothing, etc. So she totes a pretty big vegan lifestyle. If that makes sense. Now for the gelatin. She knows what gelatin is, she knows what it's made out of, she knows that there are obvious things that she can't eat. But she had no idea that a lot of candy specifically had gelatin apparently. When I told her that they had gelatin in it, she knew what gelatin was but Googled the candies to see if I was correct. I think she is either really dumb or she eats non-vegan stuff all the time when no one's watching, and had to pretend to be horrified about it at this point. Cause a lot of you guys have pointed out that you literally can't be vegan and not know these things. I'm not vegan, I'm not even freaking vegetarian, and I know these things.